A shalom to the hopeful elect. First and foremost, I'd like to give all honor, praises, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachakodash. Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders at Great Millstone who teach the truth and rule well. This is the brother Yatabio Ba'ala coming back from the GMS SF Bay Area camp. I got a quick lesson today. All right, Lord's will is edifying. But this one going into the topic of the Samaritans and getting a full understanding of what Matthew the 10th chapter is talking about. All right, when it's talking about the Samaritans, all right, because like the scriptures say, with all that getting good understanding. And when we read verses, all right, when we go into scripture, we have to have what? Proper context. All right. And like the apostles and elders always go into, you got to understand history to know the mystery. All right. And there's a lot that happened in that land to know, all right, what Yahweh Shai was talking about. So let me just get into it. This is Matthew 10 and 5. And it says, These 12 Yahweh Shai sent forth, commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. All right, and we bring this out a lot because this is the Lord specifically telling the disciples not to go to the Gentiles. And why is that? Because the Lord was and he is not dealing with the Gentiles when it comes to the natural born Gentiles. All right, because again, you have to get context. The scriptures do talk about Gentiles, but there's a proper context to it because our people were called Gentiles. We were called Gentiles. All right, so again, it's getting in that proper context. But what is the Lord saying? Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now we're gonna get some history on that because what's going on here? Why is the Lord telling the disciples not to go into the city of the Samaritans? All right. Well, what happened? All right, this is Second Kings, and this is where you find that history. All right, Second Kings 17 and 6, and it says, um, I mean, you could read the whole chapter, but for the sake of time, let me just start at 5. It says, Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in the in Hala and in Habor by the river Gozan and in the city of the Medes. So there's a captivity that took place, all right, with the northern tribes, all right, and it's going to go into it. It says, For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their power, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods. And again, when you go into the split, all right, with Rehoboam and Jeroboam, all right, when the with back basically all the northern kings, all right, the northern tribe kings, they all went off. All right, so what happened? The Lord sent the Assyrians and took the majority, all right, of the northern tribes, all right, out of that land. And it's going to get into it. It says, and walked in the statues of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, their power. And they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. So Jake went off, all right, specifically the north, okay, in this time right here. It says, and they set them up images in groves of every hill and under every green tree, and there they burnt incense in all the high places, as did the heathen, whom the Lord Yahweh Shem Shai carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger. For they served idols, whereof the Lord had said unto him, You shall not do this thing. Yet the Lord testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by the seers, saying, Turn you from your evil ways, and keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hardened their necks like to the neck of their fathers, that did not believe in the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai their power. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them. And they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the heathen that were around about them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do like them. Yeah, we were supposed to be a separate people. All right, we weren't supposed to go after the ways of the heathen because, like it says, the ways of the heathen are vain. All right. Now I'm going to jump down a little bit. It says, therefore, the Lord was very angry with Israel and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only, talking about the southern kingdom. Also, Judah kept not the commandments of the Lord their power, but walked in the statutes of Israel, which they made. And the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel and afflicted them and delivered them into the hand of spoilers until he cast them out of his sight. For he rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. And Jeroboam drave Israel from following the Lord and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he said by all his servants the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. All right, so the northern kingdom, the majority of the northern kingdom was taken out. Now, what did they fill that land with? All right, verse 24 says, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, and they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. All right, and so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared not the Lord. Therefore, the Lord sent lions among them, which slew some of them. All right, now when you go down to read, they had to be taught. All right, but they were heathen. Okay, it says. Actually, let me just read it. It says, yeah, it says, so they went to complain to the king. It says, then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel and taught them how they should fear the Lord. All right, so he taught the heathen. All right, all these heathen that we just named, they had to have a priest, all right, Levite, come and teach them how to fear the Lord. Howbeit, every nation made gods of their own and put them in the houses of the high places, which the Samaritans had made, every nation in their cities wherein they dwelt. And the men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima, and the Avites made Nibaz and Tartek, and the Sepharites burnt their children to fire to Adramelech and Anamelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. So they feared the Lord and made unto themselves of the lowest of them priests of the high places, which sacrificed for them in the houses of the high places. They feared the Lord and served their own gods after the manner of the nations whom they carried away from thence. All right, and it says right here, unto this day they do after the former manners. They fear not the Lord, neither do they after their statutes, or after their ordinances, or after the law and commandment which the Lord commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel. All right, so these heathen, even to this day, cannot serve the Lord. All right, they're heathen. All right, but again, this shows you that there was transplants in that land. All right, in the land of Samaria. All right, and this was the time of what? Ahaz. Okay, so now fast forward. Okay, you have what? You have Samaritans. Now, through the Ruach HaKodesh, right, Holy Spirit, and getting the context, you have to understand which Samaritans they are. All right. Now, John 4, and real quick before I get this, just to going to continue into the history. All right. Second Chronicles 30. All right, and verse 1. All right, and this is after the captivity. All right, after Israel was taken out of the land. It says, and Hezekiah sent to all Israel and Judah and wrote letters also to Ephraim and Manasseh, that they should come to the house of the Lord at Jerusalem to keep the Passover unto the Lord power of Israel. Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. For the king had taken counsel, and his princes and all the congregation in Jerusalem, to keep the Passover in the second month, for they could not keep it at that time, because the priests had not sanctified themselves sufficiently, neither had the people gathered themselves together to Jerusalem. And the thing pleased the king and the congregation. So they established a decree to make proclamation throughout all Israel, from Beersheba even to Dan, that they should come to keep the Passover unto the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, power of Israel, at Jerusalem. for they had not done it in a long time in such sort as it was written. So the post went with the letters from the king and his princes throughout all Israel and Judah, and according to the commandment of the king, saying, Ye children of Israel, turn again unto the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai, power of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remnant of you that are escaped out of the hands of the kings of Assyria. So again, there was a remnant that escaped. Not all Israel, all right, not all the northern went into those other lands. Not all of them were taken captive. You still had a remnant, all right, in the lands. All right, now keep that in mind because again, it's going to be important to understand and get the full context of what Yahweh Shai was talking about. All right, it says, And be not like your fathers and like your brethren which trespassed against the Lord Yahweh Shem Shai, power of their fathers, who therefore gave them up to desolation, as ye see. Now be ye not stiff-necked as your fathers were, but yield yourselves unto the Lord, and enter into his sanctuary, which he has sanctified forever, and serve the Lord Yahweh Shem Shai, your power, that the fierceness of his wrath may turn away from you. For if you turn again unto the Lord, your brethren and your children shall find compassion before them that led them captive, so that they shall come again into this land. For the Lord your power is gracious and merciful, and will not turn away his face from you if you return unto him. All right? So this is a decree that's going out, letting the remnant, all right, of the northern tribes come and worship the Passover. All right? But here's their response. So the post passed from city to city through the country of Ephraim and Manasseh, even unto Zebulun, but they laughed them to scorn and mocked them. Nevertheless, so this is the mentality of the north, all right? The majority, I should say. Okay? Well, this is the mentality of the majority of Israel in general, but at this time, the north laughed them to scorn. Okay, nevertheless, diverse of Asher and Manasseh and of Zebulun humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. So there was a remnant that came. All right, but there was even more that didn't believe. All right, that were still in those lands. Also in Judah, in the hand of the Most High was to give them one heart to do the commandment of the king and of the princes by the word of the Lord. So again, we're just going into a little history showing you that, yes, the majority of the north was taken out of that land, but you still had a remnant that was left. You had a little bit of that remnant that believed. All right, they came to worship in the Passover, but as a whole, what did they do? It said they laughed them to scorn. All right, and what do you think they were into? They were into the same things, going off idolatry. All right, and then you had these Samaritans in the land too. What do you think they were doing? They were all doing the same thing. All right, they were going further and further away from the Lord, following after the heathen. All right. So again, when you go back to Matthew 10, it says, These 12 Yahushua sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go not ye into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter you not. Enter you not. Why? Because we just read there was transplants there. All right. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That little remnant that scattered, those Israelites that were over there, all right, of the north in that land. All right, this is who Yahweh Shai was telling them to go to. All right, not the heathen. All right, because again, the heathen are not a part of this. They have nothing to do with the first and second covenant. All right, they have nothing to do with the kingdom. All right, of Yasharallah, the kingdom of heaven, other than to be slaves. Okay, they have no part in salvation. They have no part in believing or anything to do with us. All right. That's why Yahweh Shai is specifically saying not to go into those cities because the heathen are there. All right. Now, fast forward, to get into the context of the woman, all right, of Samaria. All right. This is a heathen. Okay. John 4:7. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Yahweh Shai saith unto her, Give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away into the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, asketh drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. All right. And as a whole, yeah, Jake had nothing to do with the Samaritans. All right. Even the north, all right, that were Israelites, but what were they acting like? Heathen. All right. And you can get into that history. All right. And an example of that, which really was the southern kingdom in the book of Maccabees. All right, even in the southern kingdoms, they wanted to be like the Greeks. Okay, and what was the circumcision doing? They were treating them like heathen. They were calling them heathen. All right, there was a stigma that the Israelites, all right, or the southern kingdom had, that were following the Greek traditions. All right, now this is another example. How much more the north, following after the heathen and being mixed in with the Samaritans. The same thing. All right, they're just like heathen, but nonetheless, being of the Israelite heritage, they still had a chance at what? At hearing the word and being saved. All right, but it was a scattered few. It says, Yahushua answered and said unto her, if thou knowest, so like, yeah, if thou knowest the get, and also of a whole, the Jews had no dealings with the Samaritans, because the majority of those Samaritans were heathen. All right. It says, if Yahushua answered and said unto him, if thou knewest the gift of the Most High, and who it is that saith to thee, give me to drink, thou wouldst have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. The woman saith unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself and his children and his cattle? Yahushua answered and said unto her, Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up unto everlasting life. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Yahushua said unto her, Go call thy husband and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Yahushua said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband, for thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband, and that saidest thou truly. The woman said unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you say that in Jerusalem, in this place where men ought to worship. Yahushua saith unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when you shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. And why is that? Well, we read that in 2 Kings, the 17th chapter. All right, even though they were taught, to fear the Lord, what did they do? The heathen still went after their own gods. All right, so Yahushua is breaking it down. She can't worship. Verse 22, it says, You worship, you know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. All right, now I wanted to get into this word Jews, because it's not just talking about the southern kingdom or the tribe of Judah. All right, it says Jewish, belonging to the Jewish nation, Jewish as respects to birth, origin, religion. All right, now when you go to the Strongs over here, it's, yep, it says, this is the B definition. It says, without a noun, substantively Jewish as respects to birth, race, religion, a Jew. Give some examples. Now it says, before the exile, citizens of the kingdom of Judah. After the exile, all the Israelites, the Jews, the Jewish race. So again, it's breaking it down. It's showing us, all right, that what? This woman was not an Israelite. All right. Yahushua said it himself. What did it say? Salvation is of the Jews, meaning the Israelites. Okay. Now it says, where was I? Yep, it says, you worship ye not know what, because she was an actual Samaritan. She was an actual heathen. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews, but the hour cometh and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. All right, which is Israel and ultimately the elect. It says the Most High is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth, which showing you that the heathen can't worship Yahweh Shemel Shai. All right, I mean, even the 2/3 of our people can't worship him right now. All right, how much more the heathen? All right. Now, I'm going to jump down just for the sake of time. And it says, the Samaritans, verse 39, and many of the Samaritans of that city believed on him. Now, when you go into that word Samaritans, all right, which she was a Samaritan too, it just means an inhabitant of the city of Samaria. All right, so now it's our job to understand and get the context who it's talking about. Now, we just read Yahushua breaking it down that salvation is only of the Jews, or salvation is only of the Israelites. All right. Now, who are these Samaritans? It says, and many of the Samaritans of that city believed on him for the saying of the woman which testified, he told me all that I ever did. So when the Samaritans were come unto him, they besought him that he would tarry with them, and he abode there 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. All right. And said unto the woman, now we believe not because of thy saying, for we have heard him ourselves, and know that this is indeed the Hamashiach, the Savior of the world. All right. So again, these Samaritans right here are Jake. All right. Are the northern tribes believing that were scattered, or that were that remnant in that land. All right. That what they came back to the true knowledge of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, that believed on him. All right. And he just broke it down. He broke it down to the woman, saying that she won't know how to worship, but the true believers will. All right. So the Samaritans, that the Israelites that were living there, after they heard the woman, they believed. But after what? They seen the Messiah. All right. And it wasn't because of her, it was because of Yahushai. All right. So again, it's about getting proper context. All right. So, when you see that word Samaritans, it means a Samaritan or Samaritans, you got to get the proper context. All right. Which we read the history. There was a lot of transplants. Okay. But there was also a remnant. All right. That's why that's the lost sheep of the house of Israel. All right. Now I'm going to get another example. All right. The 10 lepers cleansed. Luke 17 and 16. All right. It says, so this was after they were cleansed. It says, verse 15, and one of them, which he saw that he was healed, turned back and with a loud voice glorified the Most High, and fell down on his face at his feet, giving him thanks. And he was a Samaritan. And Yahushua answering said, were thou not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? Thou art not found that returned to give glory to the Most High, save this stranger. And he said unto him, arise, go thy way, thy faith hath made thee whole. So what stranger is this talking about? It was a Samaritan, right? You would think he was a heathen. But when you get that context, all right, with all that get understanding, the word for stranger there is G241, allogenes, all right, which you kind of see the word genes, all right. And what does it say? Sprung from another tribe, a foreigner, alien, all right. But this is the point, sprung from another tribe. And we just read there was a remnant of the other tribes that were still left in Samaria. All right, this was a lost sheep. Okay? And one more. All right. The Good Samaritan. Luke 10 and 30, it says, and Yahushua answered and said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment and wounded him and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him and passed by on the other side. Showing you that, these Jakes, all right, which, of the circumcision, just weren't right. But then you had somebody, what's going to get into it, says, but a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came there where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him, and went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow, when he departed, he took out 2 pence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee. Which now of these 3 thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves? And he said, he that showeth mercy on him. Then said Yahushua unto him, go and do thou likewise, which was an example of a righteous man, all right, who had morals, okay? But was he a heathen? No. G4541 Samaritans, the same word. It's just an inhabitant of the city of Samaria. So it was a Jake. All right, showing you that this was an example of an Israelite foreigner doing good. All right, having better morals, being more brotherly, all right, than the circumcision. All right, which again, that's why, the circumcision and the uncircumcision, it doesn't matter. All right, it's those who believe. All right, whether you knew you were an Israelite or whether you were a Gentile, which technically we're all Gentiles now. It didn't matter as long as you believed and had faith. All right. You have faith on Yahushua. All right, you did what was commanded. You did the will of the Lord. Okay, which yet again shows you with proper context who these Samaritans are. All right, so just going through that history. All right, in Second Kings, the 17th chapter, we've seen how there was transplants, but there was also in Second Chronicles, the 30th chapter, it shows us that there was a remnant of those northern tribes. All right, so when we have proper context to Matthew 10, we know who that's talking about. All right, and when we talk about the woman of the well, we know she's a heathen because she can't get it. But the Lord said the true worshipers will come. Okay, so many of those Samaritans who did believe were true worshipers were actually Israelites. All right, from one of the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. All right, it's very simple. Again, it's very simple. When you do a little studying. All right, that's why the scriptures say, "Study to show thyself approved." You get the proper context of what's actually going on. All right, so you don't bug out when there is scriptures that talk about salvation to the Gentiles. You know exactly what that's talking about because you know the history. All right, this is just one example. But also going into the book of Maccabees, how we became Greeks. All right, and now fast forward to today, how much of our people, calling themselves everything under the sun, white, black, Irish, Jamaican, African American, it's the same thing. All right, but what does the lineage go back to? Goes back to the nation of Israel. All right, but yeah, Lord's will, this is edifying. I just wanted to get a little history, about the Samaritans, and Lord's will, is edifying. Once again, I want to give all honor, praises, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders at Great Millstone. Shalom to the elect and above all.